my fight fans? So happy Halloween, first of all. Hopefully you guys have a safe and fun one. So let's talk about what just recently happened over this weekend. We got Jake Paul beating Anderson Silva. Gotta say, guys, it was actually a pretty entertaining fight. It was actually very entertaining. Nothing like the way it was with the Tyron Woodley fight. Definitely, obviously not the Jake Paul, Ben Askren fight, but definitely nothing like those two Tyron Woodley fights. Even though that first Tyron Woodley fight was a little more entertaining, but that second Tyron Woodley fight, definitely not even flow. It was definitely just, yeah, it was a very, very, very bad boxing match. But nonetheless, this one, him versus Anderson Silva, was a very, very good one. A very good boxing match. And, they both look good. Jake Paul definitely looked good, moving around, doing with his jabs. He kept his composure a lot. I mentioned that in previous videos that he has to keep his composure. He can't let himself get sunk into Anderson's game plan. Anderson's game plan definitely held up for a little bit. I did see him try to play a little bit with his hands and put down his hands just a little bit. So he definitely they both stuck to each other's game plans as much as possible. Anderson Silva's footwork was just phenomenal. He honestly reminded me a little bit of Muhammad Ali with that little footwork, that little foot shuffle that he was constantly doing left and right. That's Anderson Silva's main key. His footwork is phenomenal. He dances and moves around like in the ring and the octagon, like he's a ballet dancer or something. So nonetheless, they both have phenomenal skills for for one, Anderson Silva's age, and for Jake Paul for his being as much of a boxer that he is. So with that being said, it definitely did not disappoint. Definitely did not disappoint, especially that last round. He clocked him. He hit it when it mattered. It was definitely not a back and forth fight. I mean, excuse me, not a back and forth fight. It was definitely a back and forth fight. But anybody could have got that decision. Anybody could have got that decision. Anybody could have edged that decision out. But it wasn't up until that last round where Jake Paul really clocked him with that good, I believe it was a right hook, a right hand shot, and put Anderson Silva down on his back. So it wasn't like Anderson Silva was seriously hurt. He wasn't seriously out, but it was definitely one of those snapshots, one of those shots that just get you and bam, like just a flash knockdown, I guess you could say. He wasn't a hurt knockdown where he couldn't get back up and couldn't he was stumbling everywhere. It was just one of those got you, bam, right in the button, hit him to the ground. Anderson Silva got right back up. He was okay. He was still doing his thing. And yeah, I believe it wasn't a unanimous decision for Jake Paul, but I definitely see it more of a split decision. It was definitely a hard fought, a hard earned split decision. So definitely, guys, for 100%, you got to appreciate what Jake Paul has done and how far he has come. A lot of us were talking trash. A lot of us were talking like, oh, he's not ready. He's not ready. Be that as it may, yes, Anderson Silva is 47 years old, and he's not a boxer. So there is still that argument there. But at the same time, he's definitely upped his game. Coming from somebody boxing like someone who's never had any boxing experience, somebody who has very little boxing experience, like a Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley, to somebody who has really good amount of boxing experience. Like I said, Anderson Silva was trained for a long time with Freddie Roach. He's used his hands a long time in the cage. So this was definitely a very, very higher level up for Jake Paul. But what's next for Jake Paul? Well, that should be very relatively easy, guys. What's next should be Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, without question, should be next for Jake Paul 100%. Because just that is a big setup. That's a big mega fight for Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. This fight could have happened a lot sooner, but because of negotiations, obviously, with Dana White and Dana not too keen on letting his guys box or anything like that, and of course the bad blood that Dana White and Jake Paul are into. I'll get into that later. But yeah, with all that, I definitely got to say that Nate Diaz and Jake Paul can finally make their fight happen, because it couldn't happen prior to this, because Nate Diaz was still contracted with the UFC, and he's still, and beyond, if you guys even look further back into it, he couldn't even be a very free agent. Like, basically, he was a free agent after his last fight technically, but come December, he's an official free agent. I'm talking about Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz fought out his last fight in his contract in September, and that was it. It's done deal. But I believe the UFC has 90 days extra to try to negotiate with Nate Diaz try to negotiate and see if they could possibly get him to stay in the UFC. As to far as my knowledge, Nate Diaz is not sticking with that. Nate Diaz is not going with that. Nate Diaz is 100% leaving the company. He's done. He doesn't want any part of it right now. I'm sure he'll come back. I'm sure he will have like another cage match. I'm sure that we'll have ourselves a Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz down the road. But I believe Nate Diaz just wants to go out and do his own thing. And what is the next thing is going against Jake Paul and making that money, because that will be a big fight, especially after this fight. Being the fact that we saw Jake Paul, he does have good hands. He can hold his own against a very good striker. Now you put him in there with a very elite striker, a guy who, just as like Anderson Silva, has been training high-level strikers, who his main game was striking. Nate Diaz was a 100% just pure boxer. He's even trained with the guys like Andre Ward, like I mentioned before, and Andre Ward has mentioned multiple times that he could go in there and mix it up with the best of the best in boxing. So I believe that would be next. And I believe there was actually a little bit of a scuffle or some kind of trash talk among each other, because I believe Nate Diaz had to get escorted out of the building. And that's one thing you got to watch out for, guys. That's one thing that Jake Paul has to watch out for. He could trash talk to Tyron Woodley. He could trash talk to Anderson Silva. He could do all these little things like got your hat with Floyd Mayweather. Nate Diaz don't play that game. Nate Diaz and his crew ain't going to play around. They are going to come over there. You're going to trash talk with them, sure. But then if you try to put his hands, you try to get hands on you try to put his hands on him or anything like that, his crew, they're going to come out swinging 100%. No ifs, ands, or buts. There ain't going to be no shoving match. There ain't going to be nothing like that. It's going to be straight up 100% fist throwing, hands throwing. We've seen what it was like with that Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz press conference back at UFC 202. They started chucking water bottles and energy drinks at each other. Conor McGregor slapped his hand out of the way in their first fight, and the whole squad went on there and rushed him and everything like that. So just, yeah, that's the kind of fighter that Jake Paul is going to be going against. He's going against a straight up street fighter. The guy don't give a shit. Nate Diaz army is going to come in around there, bring his crew, and everyone's going to, and I'm sure Jake Paul is going to bring his crew. So he needs to be on his P's and Q's on that one. He really needs to be on point with that one, because yeah, you don't want to mess around. You don't want to play those type of games with Nate Diaz, because Nate Diaz don't play games. Nate Diaz isn't going to fall for that, or he ain't going to save it to the cage. He don't care. He'll straight up fight with you on stage, and if the fight doesn't happen, that's on you. That's just the kind of person Nate Diaz is. I promise you, the UFC has offered him millions and millions and millions of dollars to stay in the UFC organization, but he did not care. He straight up was like, nope, I want to go do this. So if you, like, the point of that is saying that Nate Diaz just does not care about money. So he will slap you, he will smack you, he will knock you around, and the fight might not happen. He don't care. He don't care if he doesn't get paid. That's on, he don't really care. So with that being said, I do believe that would be a very fun fight and a very interesting fight, because now we saw how Jake Paul is. We saw how Jake Paul goes with his hands. He's able to mix it up with a great striker himself. But at the same token, he was getting hit, and the guy was 47 years old. And Anderson Silva isn't known for throwing a lot of super punches, like a lot of punches at once. Nate Diaz, on the other hand, he is going to jab and jab and jab, throw punches. They might not have a lot of pop on them. They may not have a lot of power on them. He will go for the kill if he does get just so happen to connect on that right spot. But he loves and loves to throw those 8, 9, 10 punch combinations. He's not some person. He's not a sniper that's going to go after one punch. So, and the problem is, though, Nate Diaz does leave his chin open just a little bit, throwing those punches, overwhelming him with punches. He is accepting, he is basically open for those overhands and those hooks and all those other shots that he can get clipped with. That's just the problem with the throwing so many punches at once. One person could just take that power and just swing and hope he connects, and 90% of the time they could possibly connect with Nate Diaz, because he's just so busy throwing punches on you. So it would be a very fun fight, guys, and a very fun press conference, a very fun countdown. I am definitely looking forward to that one 100%. I hope it's in Vegas. That'll be one hell of a showdown. I'll be definitely looking forward. I'll definitely be there every step of the way. That, I believe, is what's next. It should be next. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't be. I can't see a Tommy Fury or a Hasim Rahman. Those guys are just, unfortunately, they had their chance. I don't see it happening anytime soon, not unless I see possibly Tommy Fury and Hasim Rahman making their way up and possibly making a bigger name for themselves to make us want to buy it and see it that much more. As far as that goes, what is going to be going on with him and Dana White? Now, he did after his little post-fight, at his post-fight press conference, he was talking, he said some stuff about Dana White. And yeah, You know, him and Dana are going to continue going back and forth. They're always going to continue to have bad blood with each other. You know, of course, Dana's his big thing, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, because with this fight with Anderson Silva and this whole thing with Nate Diaz, all this stems from the fact that Dana White has been controlling his fighters, not allowing his fighters to go and fight the fights that they want to go do outside the UFC. That's what he's been doing for a long time. You know, he allowed Conor, made a lot of money. I don't know if you like the outcome, but it did not make sense. That's what's going on with the Francis Ngannou situation. Francis Ngannou wants to go out and box. Excuse me one second, guys. That's what Francis Ngannou wants to do. He wants to go and box. He wants to go out there and be able to, you know, have freedom in this contract. That's what Nate Diaz. I promise you, Nate Diaz would never have left the UFC if he had freedom in his contract to go out and fight at other promotions, other organizations, and that's what these guys want to do. I understand from Dana's point, he doesn't want his guys just to go out and do whatever they want to do, and they lose their name value. Yeah, it's understandable, but at the same time, it's boxing. Maybe not other MMA promotions, but it's boxing. We already know that MMA and a boxer doesn't really connect well, but you can go out there and try and make your payday, because we already know you're not going to pay these guys what they're going to get in boxing. Conor McGregor would have never, ever got paid that amount of money like he did with Floyd Mayweather in the UFC. And it would literally have taken him his whole career. The superstar he is, the star level that he is, if he continued to winning fights, and if he continued to bring big blockbusters to the arenas, whether it be in Dublin, whether it be in Ireland, whether it be in Vegas, New York, don't matter, he would have had to take literally his whole career to get paid that $100 million paycheck that he got with Floyd Mayweather. So that's just it. And that's the point that we're trying to make here, that they're not paying these guys enough. They could see they can make a lot more in boxing just for a couple of fights, and let them go do it. Why? The UFC is going to make they're going to make their cut. If they help promote it themselves as well, they put their money in there as well, they're going to make a fat paycheck themselves. So it just doesn't make, honestly, it doesn't make no sense. It just makes a sense of like, no, you're not allowed to do this, and my say is I say so, and that's it. It just sounds like a more of a I'm in charge, you do what I say type of thing going on right now when it comes to the fighters in boxing. And that is why I bring this up with him and Dana, because they're always going to go back and forth. Jake Paul wants to, I guess you could say, organize the sport, organize it, and give it like a fighter union and such. He wants to be able to go and say, these guys need health care, these guys need health plan, which is true, and these guys need bigger paydays, which is true. So yeah, that's why him and Dana are always going to go at each other. They're always going to have a choice of words. I've seen Dana White multiple times at the press conferences saying he doesn't want to talk about Jake Paul no more. He doesn't want to be affiliated with Jake Paul no more. He doesn't want to even be associated with that name anymore. Probably because, yeah, it is making him look bad in a sense with Jake Paul continuing to win, continuing to beat the UFC guys, and continuing to make this money, and trying to gain more and more people for this fighter union type of deal that they got going on. So I don't see Dana White and Jake Paul ever being friends, not anytime soon. I do think that he could possibly be in the MMA, but that's years and years down the line. I'd rather him stick with what he knows and what he actually knows how to do. He knows how to box right now. He knows how to fight right now. It takes almost a lifetime to learn how to do really good jiu-jitsu, really good wrestling, and really good Muay Thai. Really good to have all those weapons in your arsenal when it comes to being in the MMA, when it comes to being in UFC. Because yeah, we've seen what it was like with CM Punk. He trained for 1-2 years, if not, and just it was just not good. It did not look good whatsoever. And that will be the exact same what would happen with Jake Paul. It's good to have that mindset that's saying that you can do it, but it's a totally different outlook and different way of looking at things when you're actually in the cage and when you actually are doing it. Way different. You're gonna need, it's not like boxing where you could do it for 5 years and get some decent wins underneath your belt. Yeah, it could happen and you could learn. Of course, there's levels, which brings me up into my next topic that he wants to continue to try to go out and call Canelo. And that's one thing I gotta say, guys. When it comes to him constantly trying to call out Canelo, it's like, dude, what are you doing? You know, look at the struggle. Like, I'm not saying anything. When I compare him to going against Anderson Silva, when I compare him to going against a much lower level boxer, when I compare him to go against an MMA fighter, I'm going to say, yeah, you look pretty good. But if you're going to try to go from a literally older MMA fighter who is really good at striking, who is really good at what he does, and trying to go to the number 1, 2, or 3 pound for pound fighter in the world, in Canelo, You are literally, really beyond words crazy. Crazy, because I promise you, it is completely different. You're not even close. Not even close. It will literally take him almost 5 years, maybe even 10 years to even touch that surface to be almost ready for a Anderson Silva. Because excuse me, a Canelo Alvarez. I'm not saying that just because I'm a Canelo fan. I am a very big Canelo fan, but because of the fact that your experience in the ring, Canelo has more experience that he has forgotten about than Jake Paul will ever learn when it comes to boxing in his lifetime, maybe even 2 or 3 lifetimes. Canelo has been boxing since he was a little boy. Since he was a child, made his pro debut at 16. He has fought the best of the best of the best. This is not a guy that's been fighting MMA fighters. This is the guy that's been fighting the highest of high levels and continues to fight highs of high levels, regardless of what anybody else likes to say or likes to try to say against Canelo. Because no, regardless of like, oh, well, he needs to be fighting David Benavidez and he should have fought this and Charlos and so forth and so forth. It don't matter. Canelo has never ever backed down from a fight. He has always fought the who's who of boxing. You name him, he probably fought him. And a lot of these guys, he didn't even have to fight, and he fought them. So that's the fight that Jake Paul is looking for. Why? Of course, it's a big payday because Canelo is the biggest superstar, money superstar that you can have. When you fight Canelo, it was like when Floyd fought. When it's like fighting Floyd, it's like fighting Oscar De La Hoya. When you fight these guys, you're gonna get a payday. 100%. Canelo's right there. You're going to get a payday. But is he ready for that? No. He would be finished in probably 3 rounds because you're looking at a guy who throws body shots. You're looking at a guy who has boxing skills, whose footwork, whose hand speed has just constantly improved and improved and improved. I heard what he said in the press conference, in that post-fight press conference. He said something like he isn't looking the same since Triple G. Well, no, because he was definitely hurt in that fight, and he has been doing it forever. He's been doing it for what, 15 years? Name a time when Canelo took a year off from boxing. Every person has almost done that in their career. Every other person has always taken a couple years off or a year off from boxing to let their body heal. Canelo hasn't done that, and I strongly believe and feel he should go and do that because he needs to. He really needs to do that because it's just not good for him, 100%. But let's just play this devil's advocate. 100%, like it might just happen, that it could potentially happen. Again, it won't go down like Anderson Silva. It won't go down like a Tyron Woodley. I would love for, and here's what I gotta say regarding my little, I guess you could say my little outlook of what I'm looking for when it comes to Jake Paul. When it comes to Jake Paul, he still does need to fight a boxer, regardless of these guys done boxing training. Now he's getting to that level. Before he fought wrestlers. Now he's fighting strikers in the MMA world. Now it's time to see what he can actually do against a pure boxer. Of course, you got the Tommy Furies, the Hasim Rahmans. Those guys are boxers. So I could give it to him. But still, if you want to try to go against these guys and then try to go against Canelo again, first of all, Canelo is not even going to entertain the idea. Canelo is a pride guy. Canelo is all about making history. He wants to go after that cruiserweight belt. Kind of hope he doesn't, because hey, pretty dangerous up there. He wants to try to collect all the 175 belts, the light heavyweight belts. He wants to try to go after all that. So he's all about history. He's not necessarily into making money. He's already making money. All these other guys that he's gonna go, Jake Paul's gonna go against, Anderson Silva, Tyron Woodley, Nate Diaz. These guys, they are trying to get money as well. They're trying to get paid. Canelo has more money than Jake Paul can ever catch up to. And he's going to continue that. He's going to continue over and over and over again. Canelo's going to continue getting those 30, 40, 50, $60 million paydays each and every time he goes in there. Each and every time. I'm not going to say 100% that it's not going to happen. I'm not going to say 100% that it's not even possible to happen. 100% no. It could happen. It could be possible. But do I see it happening anytime soon? Not necessarily. But we'll guys see. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.